Hello and welcome to the Leveraged Podcast. I'm Paul Richard, your host today, and we are privileged to have Michelle Cramer here with us from On Angels Wings. Welcome to the program today, Michelle. It's good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Awesome, awesome. And I'm in a new studio today, just trying it out, and so this is great. I think we got great audio going. I'm excited to talk to you about On Angels Wings. Will you give us a little background about On Angels Wings and tell us how you got involved in this particular business?
Yeah, absolutely. My oldest just turned 18 this year, and when he was born 18 years ago, I was super naive. Back then, only thing anybody ever talked about was the possibility of miscarriage through the first trimester. So, like, once you got past that first trimester, you were golden. You weren't worried, you weren't concerned, everything was going to be fine. My grandmother had 3 stillbirths, but I thought, that's obsolete. That was back in, the 50s, and that doesn't happen anymore. When he was about a month old, though, I found out that, in fact, stillbirth was still occurring, and it was still occurring 1 in 165 pregnancies. Today, even 18 years later, it's 1 in 175 pregnancies. So it's still happening quite often. Stillbirth is 20 weeks gestation and above. So we count, like, medically, miscarriage is anything 19 weeks or earlier, and stillbirth is 20 weeks and above. So knowing that and being and holding my 1 month old and seeing how perfectly healthy he was and nothing was wrong. The empath in me was just like, I have to do something because it's not fair that I got to bring him home and these other families didn't. I had been a photographer for about a year, found an organization at the time that I could volunteer with to take bereavement photos for these families. And I did that for about a year and a half. But what I was finding in that space was that that organization just did photos, walked away, didn't follow up with the family. And the empath in me was like, are they okay? Are they getting the support they need? Are they feeling alone? Do they need community? All of these things were constantly going through my head. And like, how do I make sure? So I stepped away from that organization and just kind of took some time to reflect and figure out what I wanted to do. And I also was really attuned to the families that not only lost their babies at birth, but the families that had a terminal risk diagnosis for their child and knew that every day was precious and they had no idea how much time they had. Like, they deserve to have that time that they do get captured as well. So around 2012, I met this little boy named Logan. He had spinal muscular atrophy. When I met him, he was 7 months old, and that condition is where the muscles begin to deteriorate from birth. It's a genetic condition, and most children with it do not see age 2. I met him at 7 months, and he already was having trouble, like, holding up his head. And we just kind of did like a lifestyle session in his home, just doing bucket list items with his parents because there was no treatment. So they were creating his whole bucket list of things that they wanted him to experience before they lost him. And we did playing in dirt and mud for the first time. And I will never, like, it's burned in my memory of him can't hold up his head, but he's like playing in the dirt and mud. Mom's helping him put his hands in it, and he gets overstimulated and he musters up every ounce of energy that he can. And he pushes the Tupperware off her lap and it goes flying everywhere. And he cackled the biggest cackle. He was so proud of himself because that's not something he normally could do. And we just had this really beautiful bond and got really close to his family. About 3 months later, he took a turn for the worse because the heart and lungs are also muscles. So that's why they eventually pass. I did what we called a goodbye session with the family, and then 6 days later he passed. And I'm a person of faith, and so for 4 years I had been feeling like I was supposed to do something, but that God was saying yes but not now, over and over and over again. Yes but not now, yes but not now. And I left Logan's funeral and was like, now? And I just heard yes and nothing else. So I went home and registered on Angel's Wings. I already knew that that's what I wanted to call it because the idea of these beautiful, precious ones being lifted up to a beautiful place on Angel's Wings just made, kind of brought comfort. And so that's where it came from. Started in 2013, July of 2013. So we're celebrating our 13th year. And we kind of, even though there's more than just photos in as far as what we do, that's our first touch point with families. And so when we're looking at our first full year, 2014, we did 41 sessions. Last year, 2025, we did 492 photo sessions. So we've had tremendous growth. Yeah. 2022 to 2023 was huge. We did around 250 sessions in 2022, and in 2023 we bumped to 450 sessions. Just over 1 year we almost doubled. So And that was we did start our first out-of-state chapter in 2023, but they only had 10 sessions of that 450. So in Missouri alone, we almost doubled the work that we were doing in 1 year. So it's consistently climbed towards 500 families that we serve each year. So it's been incredible. And because we continue to serve them and support them, we essentially have served and continue to support over 2,500 families.
That's fantastic. This is just blowing my mind. So, I mean, that's tremendous growth, right? So,
Yeah.
I would say definitely God's hand was on that progress. So, talk a little bit about okay, you talked about the photography, how that brought you into it, and who those people that you're serving. How do you advertise slash connect with those people? What's the
Yeah.
methodology there?
So we never say advertise, we say build awareness because we're
Yes,
not
yes.
trying to market ourselves in any way. We work with 21 hospitals across 7 states. We serve the entire state of Missouri, and then we have chapters in 6 other states. And so that first referral tends to be from the hospitals. So when we start a new chapter, upwards of 80% of what we do, sometimes 90, is in the hospital when we're dealing with a birth loss, a NICU loss, a micro preemie that was born, at 23 weeks and is going to be in the NICU for months. All of those things, we build these strong relationships with the hospitals and their staff refer us. As awareness in the community builds for what we're doing, then people realize that we also serve families who have a terminal risk diagnosis with their child. And so, for example, Springfield, obviously we've been here for 13 years. We're probably at 50-50, 50% loss in the hospital and 50% journey, what we call journey families, because we're capturing their journey with their child for as long as it lasts. And so it just kind of depends on where we are and how long we've been somewhere, but that's typically how they find out about us at first. And then once the community knows, then we're doing word of mouth kind of situations and, working to keep things moving on social media, keep our newsletter active so that people continue to see the services that are available and pass that information on to others.
Okay. And so how does the hospital interact with you? Do they allow you to put posters up there to come in and do sessions? How do you interact with
So
the hospitals?
we work directly with child life department, the nurses in each department. So we essentially train. I guess we provide them with our processing information. We'll sit down and do trainings if we need to, just depending on how they all communicate. It's different in every single hospital as to who is the contact person. So we just kind of accommodate each hospital. So we provide them with process information, how to get a hold of us. And so then they're just providing that information to their nursing staff, and then they're calling us when a need comes up. So it's a direct interaction. Basically, they're essentially a referral partner because we're not a service of the hospital, we're a service of the family. They're just a referral partner. They have brochures on hand. They tell the family this service is available to you. Do you want me to reach out to them and have them come? And so they make the choice yes. And so then that's how we get in the door.
I see. Yeah. Now I'm thinking, is this a little bit have some similarity to Make-A-Wish or something like that, or is it completely different?
So it's
How's
it's
that look?
different in the sense that Make-A-Wish, which we are referral partners with them as well. Make-A-Wish works with families that have children who have a medical fragile diagnosis. A lot of people think that Make-A-Wish only works with kids that are actively dying, but that's not necessarily true. It's that they're medically fragile essentially, and so there are risks involved, like a medically fragile child getting a cold is a full-blown hospitalization as opposed to a kid getting a cold, a healthy kid getting a cold at the daycare. There's a completely different dynamic. What they provide is wishes in the sense that they're helping them to go to Disney World, helping them to go to the beach, helping them to get a swimming pool at home, those kind of things. So that's more on like providing financial assistance to make those things happen. What we provide is long-term mementos, capturing milestones with them, making sure that they have something to hold on to if and when they lose their child. And then we also offer ongoing support for them. We have grief recovery services. Myself, and 4 others are certified in a grief recovery program that we provide. And then we also, we have a children's grief program for siblings of loss. And then we have several other things we do, like we send them memorial gifts for the first 3 years after their loss. We send them handwritten letters to let them know that we're thinking of them individually so that they understand that it's not just about some blanket letter that we're sending to everyone, like they're individually handwritten letters by our support coordinator so that they know that somebody is there for them. We work to create events And we have a carnival every year here in Springfield that is exclusive to our recipients so that they can come together, build community, release butterflies in honor of their kids, have some fun, build memories. We actually call it Making Memories Day. Build memories with their surviving children. It just all the ways that we can try and connect them and build community for them. That community is one of our core values as an organization. So that's more what we're doing is making sure that these families don't feel alone.
Okay. Now, was this birthed out of strictly your own, thinking and or did you have partners involved in it? I mean, early on, how did it all come to be? It's just so amazing.
Yeah, it's just me. Because I'm a very persistent individual. So when I get an idea, I'm going to go after it. And actually, at one point, one of the hospitals here in Springfield wasn't getting on board with one of the things we want to do is have them call us as soon as possible. Like if a mom comes to labor and delivery and the baby has no heartbeat, they're going to have to induce. It takes several hours for that to happen. But instead of calling us, 8 hours after baby is born, calling us while mom is laboring so that we can get someone there immediately, get the best possible images. One of the hospitals several years ago was calling us 8 hours after baby was born. And so I kept contacting them and saying, hey, this isn't the best case scenario. We want to give them the best possible images and their staff said, "You are too pushy and persistent. We want to talk to someone else in your team." And I was like, "I'm just trying to help."
There is nobody else.
Just like, "That's just, yeah, me. Sorry." So, but they had a regime change and everything switched, and they were like, "No, we're grateful. We want you here. Tell us all the things." It was completely different after that. But initially, we get some pushback sometimes, and I'm persistent. That's all there is. I do have my VP, Michelle Slavens. Yes, there are two of us named Michelle. She's been with me since the beginning. All of our recipients and photographers call us Michelle Squared. She had a loss 30 years ago. She lost her daughter. I've not experienced a loss, so it was really important to me to have somebody on my board that understood that. And she is now the vice president. She's the director of support. She's the one that's reaching out to them individually. And so she's been with me since the beginning, but she kind of is like she's just kind of like the person that holds me up essentially. So yeah, it's I have beautiful people on my board now that have beautiful ideas, and I think that's part of what the growth that we've seen is just I've had the most dynamic and fully bought in board that I've ever had over the last couple of years. And so I couldn't do it alone, but it was birthed out of my own brain.
That's awesome. And have you seen that video where somebody says, "I want to talk to somebody higher up in the organization," and then they just break into prayer, talk to Heavenly
Like,
Father, and that's really what you'd have to do, right? So like,
yeah, yeah, like there isn't one.
there's
That'd be
not yeah,
me.
that's the next level, okay? That's what we're talking
Yeah,
about. That's so cool. That's so cool. I love that. And well, okay, so talk a little bit about. Oh, I was going to ask you one question. Have you read the book Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman?
I've not read that one though.
Have you heard
I've
of
read a
it?
lot. I've read a lot of dream-focused self-help things, but not that one particularly.
Okay, and this is not dream or self-help at all. It's actually it's a model of organizations that have grown tremendously, and it's that's what the rocket fuel is. You have to have a visionary and you have to have what they call an integrator in there. And they built an entire system called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And not to get too diverted on that rabbit hole, but I would suggest you look into that a little bit. It may help you put some pieces into place as you're growing and expanding into different states and that kind of thing, to have a little bit of a model behind you as well. I'm sure you have a model already, but just
Yeah, we definitely focused. Well, one of the things that I learned a few years ago is that everything, the way that this whole organization was in my head. And
yes,
like, okay, what if I become unavailable for an extended period of time? What happens? And it was like,
yes,
not good things, not good things. So while we were growing, we were also building systems, building our first CRM in 2021. So it took us that long to get into a CRM system so we could, follow our recipients and make sure everything was going on and checks and balances. And, we built structure over the last several years. And I think that has been part of the catalyst to our growth is that without a structure, you can't grow and maintain the integrity and the value of what you're providing. If otherwise you're going to lose that. And this is not a space where we want to lose that integrity and that the value of what we're providing at all. the
Right.
quality of what we're providing. So building that structure was really important. And now I would say in 2023 was the first time in 10 years of the organization that I was able to take a vacation and not have to answer the emergency phone because we had built those systems. I could pass that on to someone. So it took 10 years for me to get there, but I went to Italy for my 20th for 3 weeks and I was like, don't
Yay.
bother me. And they handled it. And that was like such an eye opener for me. My business coach said to me about a year ago, I was just frustrated, like nobody will do the things, so I'm always doing the things. And she's like, well, who created that narrative in the first place? Did they create that narrative or did you by just always doing the things? And I was like, you need to stop right now because she wasn't wrong. So just working to rewrite that narrative that Michelle will take care of all the things. So I've been saying no to things. We should do this fundraiser. Are you going to run it? Because I do not have time. I'm the only full-time employee. I do everything. Like,
Mhm.
unless you're gonna run this fundraiser, it's not happening. Well, I don't really yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So, getting to that space where I can say no has and setting those boundaries because as an empath, you're also typically a people pleaser, and I didn't wanna let any family down, even if they didn't know. Even if they didn't know, I didn't wanna let them down. And so I was always doing all the things, always making sure everything was taken care of, and realizing that I have to take care of myself, that I have to have capacity for fun things, things that fill my cup. I mean, it's such an old adage, but you cannot pour from an empty cup, and you just can't. And so I've been working really hard towards that the last couple of years, and they're stepping up. That's why I'm saying like I've got the best board that I've had in years because they've noticed it, they've seen it, and they're stepping up. So yeah, I couldn't do it without them, but I also do a lot of things.
Well, and as you're delegating, which is a difficult thing, you're
Hmm.
certainly,
Especially when it's your baby, like
realizing yeah,
so
when it's
hard.
your baby right, when it's your baby and, nobody has the motivation that you do, right? So
Right. Yeah.
or the vision. So that's why you're casting that's why vision is so important. You're casting that vision out, and, I use it sometimes I teach on this in some of my venues about, if you went into a Marriott hotel in Dallas, Texas, you don't expect JW Marriott to be at the front desk, right? All
Right.
you
Right.
expect is that his standards are kept throughout the
Yes.
company. So if you go to a Fairfield in Florida or you go to whatever other brand you're going to that is a Marriott brand, they're just carrying that standard out to
Yes.
that facility. And that's really what you're doing. You're
Yeah.
creating the standards and carrying those out. And those that don't maybe have the motivation, they can still hold that standard up and that type of thing. And you can tell where that happens, and I was in Bucky's yesterday and what a crazy place that is. We got Bucky's near us up here in Springfield but they've cast the vision about how they're going to serve people and they have fun and it's a great environment and everybody goes there. It's a gas station, but everybody goes there. So you're creating an attractive thing for yeah, I would say a niche market or a niche
Yeah.
market. Obviously, you're
100%.
serving certain people. Yep, that have that need, and that's so awesome. So, kudos to you for following your vision and doing what God intended for you to do in that realm.
Thank you.
So, tell me a little bit more about your growth plans. And you said you were in how many states? Was it 4 or 5 or
We're in 7. If you count Missouri, we're
7?
in 7.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, 7. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
And
we
where you
we serve we serve the entire state of Missouri, and then we're Oklahoma City and Tulsa, Northwest Arkansas, Evansville, Indiana, Springfield, Illinois, and Chicago, Illinois. And we're in Overland Park, Kansas, and a couple of little outliers right on the edge of Kansas and Missouri. And then we're also in Minneapolis.
wow, okay,
Yeah.
fantastic.
And we are
And
right now we're in a sustainability model. So we had so much tremendous growth over the last, I mean, that's 23 to 20, end of 25. That's that all of that. Everything outside of
yeah,
Missouri happened in 2 years. And I bring on all our photographers. I train them. I train the area coordinators that manage some of these chapters. So recognizing, okay, I can't bring on more. One of my board members actually moved from St. Louis to Chicago. So she's heading up Chicago. She wanted to do it. And I said, okay, if you do it, not me. Because honestly, serving Chicago is like serving the entire state of Missouri because there's so many suburbs, so many hospitals. So we have to do it we have to have a very regimented way that we make that happen. When we start a new chapter, we find photographers first and then we approach the hospitals because once we approach the hospitals, they're going to start calling us immediately. And we want to be able to answer those calls. We don't want to say, oh, sorry, we don't have anybody yet. We don't want to do that. So we find photographers first. And so we started Chicago last year, but we're still building that photographer base there before we start reaching out to hospitals. But we decided this year to focus on sustainability and getting the chapters that we have fully supported as far as volunteer base and our partnership with hospitals and building awareness within those communities. Because if we continue expanding at this rate, that quality and integrity is going to start suffering, and that's not what we want. So we're focusing on those for now. We go to conferences, photography conferences and everything to recruit more volunteers. One of the big ones we go to is Shutterfest in St. Louis, and people come from all over the country. And I've had people that, like this last April when we went, they were like, I've been on your email list for 2 years and you're still not in Florida. Well, I can't tell you when that's going to happen.
We want to be, right? We want to be.
Right.
Yes.
Honestly, when I started this, I just wanted to serve, like, Springfield had a gap. When I quit working with that organization, the first organization, all of the photographers that I'd recruited, all of the work that I'd done working with the hospitals, they were all just like, well, if you're not doing it, we're not doing it. And so for 4 years, there was nothing in Springfield. So I just wanted to serve that. And then what happened was, I mean, God bless, we're getting pediatric hospitals here now, but we didn't have that 18 years ago, or 13 years ago, or 2 years ago. And so what we were dealing with was families who would get a diagnosis in utero for their child or would find out that their child was sick and they're having to go to Kansas City and St. Louis to get care. I couldn't have photographers from Springfield drive to Kansas City or St. Louis, so now I've got to get photographers in those. And that just continued to snowball. Well, now they're going to Columbia. I got to get photographers in that. So yeah, so Missouri's the only one where we serve the entire state, but why would we start expanding to other states when we only have one chapter in Indiana? Like, shouldn't we serve Indiana more thoroughly before we add another state? Like, that's the position that we're in right now. And I think that that's going to benefit us in the long run to do that slowly and safely and maintain that integrity.
What's the incentive for the photographer in your business?
Well, I mean, first of all, nonprofit business plan is a whole other different ball game than your
I
typical
understand. I just curious. I'm
small
just
business.
curious. Well, yeah.
So what we do is we have a couple of grant funders that support what we call our SNAP program, supporting our network of area photographers. That community element, extends to them too. This is really hard work, really, really hard work. And it has a huge toll on you mentally, physically, emotionally. And so we work really hard to build community for them. We pour into them all of the time. I hire experts to do exclusive webinars on setting boundaries and burnout management, and we work to train them in a myriad of ways. We do a very important photographer award every year for those that go above and beyond because we want to recognize their effort and their belief in this and their devotion to this organization. When we have the grant funds, we do incentive drawings for areas that see more than 4 sessions in a month. Each of those photographers get their name put in a hat, and we draw and we send them like $100 gift card. Like, we can't pay them, they're volunteers, but every single one of them says that's not what I'm here for. Like, I don't want to get paid. I want to use the talent that I've been given to give back to my community, and this is the way that I want to do that. So they are wholly devoted to the work that we are doing, and they find reward in providing the service, but we still want to bring community for them. We still want to show them how much we appreciate them and give back to them in the best ways that we can.
Just as far as, is there kind of a makeup of a photographer that would be able to do this? In other words, do they either have a spouse or somebody else that could provide the income, obviously, to sustain their household, and then they can give of their time and their talent? Or are they like, do a lot of them have active photography businesses that are
Mm.
making enough money where they can split off some time? Is there any type
I mean, it
of
varies
like
in
that?
so many
Okay.
ways. We don't require them to have a photography business to be a professional photographer, but they do need to have a certain skill level because these are sometimes the only photos a family ever has. And we're dealing with low lighting situations in the hospital. We're dealing with, you know, they need the technical skills, the technical know-how to provide the quality of images that we are wanting to provide. So they do have to fill out an application, and we do need to see their portfolio. We do contact references. We need to know what equipment they're shooting with. If they're telling me that they're shooting with a Sony point and shoot and this is all going to probably not make sense to a lot of people, but they're doing JPEG files and not RAW files.
Yep.
They're not using an editing software, or they're just editing on their phone. Like, those things, not they're not That's not what we're looking for. We need somebody that's using a DSLR who knows what RAW files are as opposed to JPEG files, because you can do more editing wise with those things, and that they're using like Lightroom and Photoshop, and that they back up files, and they like understand. And then most of them do have photography businesses. A lot of them have young kids themselves. And so we are not asking them, this is not a full-time commitment. This is a very, very part-time commitment. We ask for 4 sessions a year is the minimum to stay active as a volunteer.
Wow.
So they're
Yeah.
just making time where they can make time. And that's all that we ask of them. Most of the time, we can cover every need. I would say we cover probably 95% of the asks that we have from hospitals. Occasionally, there's one that happens really last minute and we're unexpected and we don't have notice, and then nobody is available because, they can't get childcare, whatever, they can't get off work. That happens, but we try to keep enough people on board that we don't have to deal with that. And it doesn't happen. So they're all just super devoted to the work that we're doing and they understand the assignment. They just understand that this is vitally important for these families, and they are proud and humbled and just so enamored by the opportunity to be that person for them.
Very good. And so in a market, each market that you're serving, just maybe get down into the numbers a little bit. So if a city like Springfield, Missouri, let's say it's 180,000 people or whatever you want to call it, as far as what areas you include in that number. And then you've got basically two major hospitals systems. And with that population, how many clients, so to speak, would you be serving annually in that market size? Can you give me a kind of an estimate?
Yeah, so Springfield, we're at about 180 families a year for the Springfield area. So that includes Bolivar because we serve Citizens Memorial, and that includes Branson, Cox Branson as well. So we serve about 180. That being said, we serve 6 hospitals in St. Louis and are around 140 in St. Louis families a year. So again, but Springfield is where we've been the longest, right? So it again is that awareness element. We're in Kansas City too, but we only serve 2 hospitals in Kansas City. And so only about 20% of what we do every year is in Kansas City, even though it's a huge major city. In fact, Oklahoma City is our third largest. It's Springfield, St. Louis, and then Oklahoma City as far as the scale. So it's just a matter of the awareness element, not necessarily the population.
Yes, yes. So in Springfield then, so would you say that you've got pretty much 100% coverage for those people at least available right now in St. Louis in, excuse me, in
Yeah, so
Springfield?
Springfield, we have about 12 volunteer photographers here, and that
Okay.
typically, I mean, I will say, we're always looking for more. Always. Because life shifts, things change, and we have a 70% retention rate year over year for our volunteers, but that 30% does drop off, and so we need to replace that 30% every year. So we're always looking for more volunteers. So I don't want anybody listening to this think, "Oh, well, they don't need me." Absolutely not, we need you. Because if we can share that burden even more with more people, then volunteers stay longer because they're not carrying so much weight. Does that make sense? So
It
we're just
does. It
trying to
does. Yes.
maintain. So we have 12 here. We have 15 in St. Louis. Those are more active areas. So I'd love to see more like 18 in Springfield and 20 in St. Louis. And we've been there before and we'll get there again. It just kind of comes in waves. So we're just grateful for anybody that's willing to take the time to give back to these families.
Very good. Well, and the reason I asked that is I have several photographers within my networking groups and that type of thing, and clients and friends that
Hmm.
may be very interested in something like this. So just to delineate, so I've got one gentleman I'm thinking of that might be very interested in this, and another lady that the photographer, are they typically going in and doing a one-time engagement with that particular family and that baby in this case, and then that's it? Or do they follow that for a time period and do multiple sessions? How does that
It
part
just
work?
depends on the situation. So with the loss situation in the hospital, they do that session, and then if that family has another child, what we call a rainbow baby, we do try to put them with the family that did their loss, or with the photographer that did their loss, because that rapport, that relationship, that trust is already there. They were there for the most intimate moment of their lives. So they want to want them to be a part of this celebration that comes after that. For our journey kids, again, those that are medically fragile or have a terminal diagnosis and are still fighting, they get pictures from us every year, and we do try to keep them with the same photographer. Last January in 25, we lost one of our longest running recipients, Ellie. She had been a recipient for 10 years, and 9 of those 10, I was her photographer. So I have a very, very deep relationship with her parents. I did with her, and that's what we want. That's another element of building community is having a photographer you know and trust, so you don't have to be anxious about how the photos are going to go, how it's going to come out. You know that this person is going to take care of you, and that's what we want for these families. Any
Okay.
stress we can take off of their plate is great.
That's awesome. And another question in regards to what they receive. So, are they getting like a coffee table book of pictures? Are they getting an album? Are they getting individual like digital uploads? What's the output normally for the family?
They get the digital files. They get them in a password protected online gallery so they can share the link with whomever they want. And then people have to have the password to download them so they have control over who sees them and who can have ownership of them, if you will. And then they have the opportunity to get prints made however they want. We have a partnership with Bedford Camera in here in Springfield, Oklahoma City, Northwest Arkansas, Kansas City. They like their whole company is partnered with us, and they will provide a free print to each of our families. And then and they have the opportunity to buy prints directly from their gallery at a discounted rate as well, which also helps, the organization if that's what they choose to, but there's no pressure to do that in any way. We just want to make it as easy as possible for some of them. So it is all digital. If a family for some reason needs them sent in a USB drive, that's something that we can do without a problem, but most of the time they want that digital file, and we keep all of the images indefinitely. So for any reason, if a family has a fire, their computer crashes, what have you, we still have all of those images and they can get them again. So we never ever delete. I have images from all the way back in 2013 and I will always.
Wow,
Yeah. So we
very
want to make
good.
sure that they are never ever lost for the families that we serve.
Okay. And then, so did you mention earlier, do you have fundraisers or donation issues going on or things going on like that? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, every nonprofit is struggling right now. It has been
Sure.
the economy's been rough, all of the cuts. We've never actually had state or federal grants, and that's intentional because there is a lot. Being the only employee, there's a lot of work that comes with those. But that doesn't mean we aren't impacted by the cuts that have happened on a state and federal level because there's a trickle down effect. When the larger nonprofits lose their funding for something, they reach out to their community because they have, forefront of mind, people know who they are, then they're getting all of these donors that are like, yeah, we're going to fill that gap. And then when we come to those donors, they don't have the funds to give to us. And so there is a trickle down effect. It had been a really, really rough year, but the last couple of months have actually, as a person of faith, I'm kind of like floored by provision. But at the same time, it has been for years, it's been highs and lows. Provision, scarcity. And I am in a position where I'm like, I'm going to need you to just stay with this provision thing
Yeah.
because the roller coaster is emotionally taxing to a level that I never experienced before because I do most of the fundraising, the donor stewardship, the, networking, the all of the things, and that is exhausting. When I started this organization, I did not want to be spending 80% of my time fundraising. I still do sessions. I still go in the hospital. I will never ever stop doing that because that is my passion, but it kind of stinks sometimes when I have to do the admin side and not the work. You know what I'm saying? So, and I think honestly, any entrepreneur, anybody who's started their own thing comes to a point where they feel that like, wait, I'm not doing the thing I love anymore. I'm doing all of the stuff that makes the thing I love happen for other people. Like that stinks. But it is at least in the last month we've seen a lot more support than we've ever seen before. And so it kind of feels like while it's taken us 13 years to get here, it kind of feels like we've crossed a threshold that we've been towing the line of for about 5 years. Michelle and I have said for about 5 years, it feels like we're on the verge of something. It feels like we're on the verge of something big. And it kind of feels like we've put our toe across that line. So I don't want to jinx it, cross every single thing that I have, but it has been a really beautiful month. I can at least say that.
Well, that's sweet. And I I've experienced some of those things as well in my own business, and so there's been a real there was an obedience thing going on as well, sometimes,
Yeah.
when and it's not I'm not necessarily pointing fingers, but I had something that I needed to do, and I did it, and then suddenly an inrush of things happened, which was really awesome. But I was gonna
I
say,
think
from
sorry.
go ahead, go
I
ahead.
think actually I completely resonate with that. One of the things I do on a personal level is choose a word for the year every year. And then I kind of do like a scriptural, spiritual study of that word and kind of see, what does this mean to me and how is it going to carry me through the year? And my word for 2026 is cast. And I grew up in a very legalistic evangelical space where like it was just cast your cares, your burdens on God and he will take care of you. But when I started digging in, it actually means to throw or hurl in both Hebrew and Greek. And I was like, that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm just like, here, I'm done. You do you, and whatever happens, happens. Like, and I think genuinely, God was just like, "Ugh, finally, okay, she's there now." Like I feel
She's
like
casting.
just oh, I'm done because I am a little bit of a type A control freak. And I'm like, here, God, I'll just take care of this for you. It's fine. And I think finally, when I'm just like, I am done doing all the legwork. Like, you do all this. I'm done. And I just feel like I genuinely in the last month feel like God grabbed me by the shoulders and said, we're not done. I got you. We're not done. So yeah, but I genuinely understand what you're saying about like, there's this thing you're supposed to do. And when you finally do it, when you finally make that connection of, oh, that's what it is. Then the windfall comes. Then the things start falling into place. And again, fingers crossed, prayerful hands. That is where we are.
And usually there's no explanation, there's I mean, it's like, I felt like I needed to call you, Michelle, and, write you a check, and you're like, "You did? Okay."
I have yet to
You
have that phone call. So
Okay.
anybody listening to this, 13 years, I've been waiting for that person to be like, I'm supposed to write you a big old check. Okay. That has not happened yet.
Yes, please.
And,
Yes,
I
please.
have friends that are in ministry or doing nonprofit work. And, I have a friend that serves as a mentor for me and was like, yeah, one day I went to this donor's house, and he'd been given like $50 a month. And he said, I'm supposed to do this and hands me a $100,000 check. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
How? Huh? Like, where's mine? But that's okay.
Wow, that's
It's all going to
incredible.
be the way it's supposed to be. So it's
Uh,
fine.
Question in the funding side. I love it, and, but a question on the funding side. So, as the hospitals are recognizing the value that you're bringing, is there any effort inside of their system to help you at all? No?
We get a couple of small donations to support our annual gala, and I am very, very grateful for that.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, absolutely. And, because that's something where, oh, these people are being helped, and there's so many things you're doing. And I so what would be the first point of contact? So if I look at my sphere of influence and I say, or somebody's watching this podcast and they go, I know a hospital administrator, in Little Rock, or I know, a nurse over here in Memphis or something. What would be your first point of contact? I know you're not looking to go, hog wild into other states and that kind of thing, but if I- how could people know, hey, this is somebody Michelle probably ought to know.
So
Can you
typically
tell I'm
typically the person I need to talk to is the nurse manager for labor and delivery or NICU,
okay,
or the child life department. And then some hospitals, not all of them, but some hospitals do have a bereavement coordinator that handles those. So those are going to be the people that I genuinely need to talk to. It is not like somewhere in upper, administration, upper management. It is the people that have boots on the ground, that are
okay,
bedside, that understand what's going on day to day. Those are the people. And then we talk and we figure it out. And then they go to the people above them and say, hey, I've talked to her. I want to do this and get approval. But we have to go to bedside first because they understand the value more than, the CEO would, because the CEO is not in the trenches with these families every day. And so that's the person that needs to be the one to talk to.
okay, very good, very good. Wow. Well, Michelle, this is fantastic. I am so
Thank you.
glad that we got a chance to get you on here. And is there any questions that I didn't ask that you'd like to bring forward?
I would love to talk about just a couple of more things. I did write
Okay.
a book in 2022 called Unshattered Grief: Helping Others Through Loss Without Breaking Them Again. That came out of all of this work that I've done and the multitude of stories that I've heard from our families about how people try to help or try to respond to their grief or try to say something to fix it, and it's not fixable. There are no expectations. It has no timeline. And so I think as a society, we approach grief very poorly when someone else around us is grieving. And there's a lot of information out there about how to grieve, but there's not a whole lot about how to help someone grieving. And so I decided to take that on. And in that process, earlier this year, I started a consulting firm called the Compassionate Workplace Initiative because what I've also seen is a myriad of situations where our families have dealt with an employer who was not prepared for their level of loss. And either, we did a survey in 2023, and in 2023, 55% of employers didn't even have, in the Ozarks, didn't have a bereavement leave policy written at all. So they had no policy for when one of their employees loses a loved one. Honestly, in a I know it's cliche now, colloquial even. In a post-COVID world, employees are more aware of the benefits that they want and deserve than we've ever been in the past. And so employees are looking for, while 55% of employers don't have a written policy, 70% of employees are looking for bereavement policies as part of their package. So that's not matching up. Like we've got to fix it. And so I'm working with managers, HR staff to review policies, to train managers on how to respond to grieving employees because nobody does that. Nobody trains them on how to deal with that. And just to make sure that we're valuing our employees because that is going to make or break whether they stay. If they lose a loved one, kid, adult, parent, spouse, whatever, the way you treat them is going to determine your retention for them. So yeah, that's another passion project of mine that I've been working towards and launched it in January. Again, it's a compassionate workplace initiative. Yeah, I'd love to work with some businesses locally and kind of help them with that. Small, big, whatever.
Do you have a website landing page
Yeah,
for those as well?
yeah. So on Angels Wings website is OAW, as in on Angels Wings, photo.org, OAWphoto.org. And then compassionateworkplaceinitiative.com.
Very good. All
And my
right.
book's on
And then the
Amazon.
book, I
It's
was
on
that
Amazon.
was my next
Yeah,
question. Your book's on
yeah.
Amazon. All
In
right.
all forms.
Fantastic. Okay. And what's the best way to reach you?
You can just reach me directly through the website or hope, HOPE, at OAWphoto.org.
Okay. Very good. And then do you have a physical location, a commercial
We have a
location
s-
here?
we have a studio that we use for events and for photo shoots, but there's nobody there during the day. We all just kind of do our things from home. So
Okay. Very good.
yeah, there's nowhere to drop by.
Okay, okay, that's what I was wondering. All right, well, awesome. Michelle, again, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, the Leverage Podcast. Look her up, get her some support, get her some connections to help her expand this nonprofit ministry. I really was what it is. So,
Yeah.
thanks again, Michelle, for being with us. I
Yeah, my
appreciate it.
pleasure. Thanks for having me.